All right, ready to dig in? Today we're taking a deep dive into Mastering Michigan Gardening, a 2025 seed to season guide.
It's a fantastic resource.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we're going to uncover the secrets to a garden that just explodes with color.
From spring.
Yeah, all the way to frost,
Mm-hmm.
even through those Michigan winters. And believe it or not,
It all starts with a seed.
with a tiny seed. We're talking about the magic of winter sowing.
Winter sowing.
It might sound a little crazy, but just picture this.
Yeah.
It's February in Michigan.
Mhm.
The snow's on the ground. You're all cozy inside. And you're starting your garden.
Exactly.
How does that even work?
Well, we're basically taking a page from Mother Nature's playbook,
Oh, I like that.
right? By mimicking her processes, we can give our seeds a serious head start.
Okay, I'm listening. Walk me through it. How does this winter sowing thing actually work?
So it's like creating a mini greenhouse. But instead of fancy equipment, all you need is a simple Ziploc bag.
A Ziploc bag. Seriously.
Seriously, you fill it with a light and fluffy seed starting mix, not soggy, that's important, and then tuck your seeds inside.
Okay, that sounds easy enough. But then what?
Then here's the part that might surprise you. The bags go outside.
Wait outside, in the freezing cold.
That's where the magic happens.
I'm skeptical, but go on.
So many seeds, not all, but many need a period of cold, moist conditions to break their dormancy.
It's like they need a little winter nap before they wake up, right?
Exactly. It's called stratification.
Stratification.
And it's Mother Nature's way of making sure those seeds don't sprout too early during a warm spell in winter, only to get zapped by the next frost.
Okay, starting to make sense now.
Yeah.
But wouldn't the seeds freeze solid out there in a Michigan winter?
That's where the Ziploc bag comes in. It acts like a little protective barrier, letting the seeds experience those fluctuating temperatures they need, but keeping them from becoming ice cubes.
So like a little winter cocoon.
Perfect analogy.
So you're saying I could just set these bags out in February and they'll just chill out there until it's time to sprout.
Pretty much. Now, the guide recommends a specific window for starting your winter sowing in Michigan. Oh, there's a specific time.
Between March 1st and 5th, 2025, to be exact.
Okay, I'll mark it on my calendar.
Yeah.
And they have this whole list of plants that really thrive with this method, right?
They do. Imagine a gorgeous carpet of Campanula blue uniform.
Oh, I love those delicate bell-shaped flowers.
And they'd be bursting forth in early spring, even before some folks have thought about planting.
So it's like getting a jump start on the season.
Absolutely. And then there are coral bells.
Coral bells. Now, those are plants I've always struggled to start from seed.
This method might just change your luck.
I'm all ears. What else is on this magical winter sowing list?
Well, you can't go wrong with the classic Shasta Daisy Madonna.
Those are stunning.
They just scream summertime with those big, bright white blooms.
And they're fantastic for attracting pollinators.
Right. Bees and butterflies will be all over them.
Okay, so I'm sold on the winter sowing. What about plants that don't do well with this method?
There are a few. The guide specifically mentions avoiding red-hot poker flamenco.
Red hot poker. Interesting. Why not that one? It needs a longer, more consistent growing season to really thrive.
Ah, that makes sense. So it's all about matching the plant to the technique.
Precisely. But speaking of timing, there's another key factor to consider.
Oh, tell me more.
We've got to keep Michigan's last frost date in mind. Typically, it's around May 15th in 2025.
The dreaded last frost. Every Michigan gardener's nemesis.
Right.
So how does that tie into my winter sowing plans? I'm picturing all these seedlings tucked away in their little Ziploc greenhouses.
And they'll be in there, patiently waiting. By mid-May, though, they'll be bursting at the seams, ready to be transplanted outdoors once that frost risk is gone.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. It's like a perfectly timed dance between the gardener, the seeds, and Mother Nature.
I love that analogy.
What else can we direct sow once the soil warms up? We're not just limited to what we start in those Ziploc bags, right?
You're right on track. The guide suggests direct sowing Coryopsis moonbeam
Moonbeam. Those are so cheerful.
and Rudbeckia goldstar.
Oh, yes, those gorgeous golden flowers. Both of those between April 17th and May 1st.
Perfect timing.
So it's like a wave of color, starting with those winter-sown beauties and then these cheerful blooms popping up as the perennials get settled.
That's exactly the idea. A well-planned garden is like a symphony of blooms,
That's a beautiful way to put it.
and it can last for months.
I'm getting so excited to get started. So we've got our winter sowing plans. We're watching for that last frost, and we've got some direct sowing on the agenda. Before we get our hands dirty, though, maybe we should break down the step-by-step process for starting those seeds.
I think that's a great idea. We can cover both indoor and outdoor methods.
Let's do it. Let's take those Campanula blue uniform and coral bells as our examples. What do you say?
Sounds good to me. Let's dive in. Okay, so first up, Campanula blue uniform for winter sowing. Grab your Ziploc bag and fill it about 2/3 full with that nice, well-draining seed starting mix.
Okay, got it. 2/3 full seed starting mix. What's next? Just dump those seeds right in.
Not so fast. We need to moisten the mix first. You want it damp, like a wrung-out sponge. Not soaking wet.
Okay, damp but not soggy.
Got it. Then you can sprinkle those Campanula seeds on top.
So no need to bury them deep?
Nope, just a light dusting of soil over the top is perfect. These little guys are what we call close to the surface germinators. They like to be near the light.
Interesting. I did not know
So
that.
seal up your bag, but don't forget to poke a few small holes for drainage. We want that excess moisture to escape.
Makes sense. So my mini greenhouse is ready to go. I just toss it outside and wait.
Exactly. Find a nice sheltered spot out of direct sun and let Mother Nature do her thing.
Love it. What about if I want to start Campanula indoors? Is that a whole different process?
It is a bit different, but still pretty easy.
Lay it on me. I've had mixed luck with starting seeds inside.
Well, for these guys, you'll want to use a shallow tray or maybe some of those little peat pots. You know the ones I mean.
Oh yeah, I've got a whole stash of those.
Yeah. Fill them up with that same seed starting mix, sow those seeds thinly, and give them a light covering of soil, just like we did with the Ziploc bag.
And then the key is keeping that soil consistently moist.
Right, but not soggy. Finding that moisture balance is so important with seed starting.
Any tips on how to do that? I always feel like I'm either drowning them or letting them dry out.
My best advice, get yourself a good spray bottle. It lets you gently mist the soil without disturbing those delicate little seeds.
Ooh, that's a great tip. I'm going to try that. What about light? Do they need a lot of sun?
They need bright light, but not too much direct sun. Think a nice, bright windowsill that doesn't get blasted by the afternoon heat.
Gotcha. So we've got our Campanula going strong both indoors and out. Let's move on to those coral bells. I'm ready for a challenge.
All right, coral bells. These beauties can be a little bit more temperamental, but the results are totally worth it.
I believe it. I've heard they can be tricky.
Remember how we talked about stratification? Well, some coral bell varieties really need that cold treatment before they'll even think about germinating.
Oh, yeah. So winter sowing them is like the perfect solution, right?
Yeah.
We're giving them the cold they crave while also getting a jump start on the growing season.
You got it. So for the winter sowing method, it's the same setup as the Campanula. Ziploc bag, moist seed starting mix, seeds sprinkled on top. Then out they go into the Michigan winter.
Easy peasy. But what if I want to start them indoors? How do I give those seeds their winter vacation?
The guide suggests putting your seed trays in the refrigerator for about a week or two.
In the fridge? Really? That seems a little strange.
It might sound odd, but it works. It tricks those seeds into thinking they've gone through a proper winter. Then, after their cold treatment, you can move them to a warm, bright spot and keep that soil moist.
Mind blown. Who knew the refrigerator can be a gardener's secret weapon?
Right. It's amazing how these plants are connected to the natural world.
It really is. Okay, so while we're waiting for our Campanula and coral bells to do their thing, let's circle back to that Michigan gardening timeline.
Yes. Planning ahead is essential for any gardener, but especially in Michigan.
Absolutely. So we've got those winter-sown plants tucked away, patiently waiting for spring. What about the plants that prefer direct sowing? When do those come into the picture?
Right. The guide suggests direct sowing Coryopsis moonbeam and Rudbeckia goldsturm between April 17th and May 1st.
That's right around when those winter-sown seedlings will be ready to move outside.
It's all about creating that continuous flow of blooms, right?
Yes. I can just picture those cheerful yellow blooms popping up as the perennials are getting settled in.
It's going to look amazing. But before we get too carried away, let's not forget about soil prep for those direct sown plants.
Good point. What kind of soil prep are we talking about?
We want that soil to be loose, fertile, and well-draining. Adding some compost is always a good idea.
Compost is like magic for the garden.
It really is. You're basically creating a welcoming environment for those seeds to germinate and develop strong roots.
I like it. Okay, so we've got our seeds started, both indoors and out. We're keeping an eye on the calendar, getting those garden beds ready, and trying to be patient. What else should we be thinking about as we navigate this seed starting adventure?
There are a few things to watch out for. Overwatering is a big one. It can lead to damping off, which is a fungal disease that can be really damaging to your seedlings.
Oh no, I definitely don't want that.
Yeah,
So finding that perfect moisture balance is key.
absolutely. And on the flip side, underwatering can be just as bad. Those poor little seedlings will dry right up.
Okay, so finding that sweet spot is essential. What about light? I know different plants have different light requirements.
Right, light is another crucial factor. The guide recommends bright, indirect light for most seedlings, but some, like those sun-loving Rudbeckias, will need more direct sunlight as they grow.
So it's all about knowing your plants, right? Doing a little research and paying attention to those cues.
Exactly. And remember, patience is a virtue, especially when it comes to seed starting. Some seeds are sprinters, popping up in just a few days. Others are marathon runners, taking their sweet time.
Like those coral bells, right?
Those are definitely marathon runners. The guide says they can take up to 3 weeks or even longer to germinate.
Okay, good to know. I won't panic if I don't see sprouts right away.
Yeah.
Are there any other signs that I need to adjust my approach? Like red flags that something's not quite right?
Yes, absolutely. If your seedlings are getting leggy and stretching towards the light, that's a sign they're not getting enough. If they're wilting, even though the soil is moist, you might be overwatering. And if they just seem stalled out, not doing much of anything, it could be a temperature issue.
Interesting. So it's all about observing, adjusting, and learning as we go.
You got it. Gardening is all about experimentation and learning from both our successes and our failures.
So true. What happens once those seedlings have a few sets of true leaves? Are they ready to head straight out to the garden?
Not so fast. We'll need to harden them off first.
Hardening them off. What does that mean?
It's basically giving them a little taste of the outdoor life before we transplant them. It helps them adjust to the wind, the sun, the temperature fluctuations. Think of it like a boot camp for baby plants.
I like that analogy. So how do we go about hardening them off? Do I just take them outside and hope for the best?
We'll get into the specifics of hardening off in just a bit, but first, I want to tell you about another fascinating technique mentioned in the guide. It takes winter sowing to a whole new level. It's called fall sowing, and it's like gardening time travel.
Time travel in the garden. Now you've got my attention. Fall sowing. It sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
Okay, so picture this. It's autumn, the leaves are turning, there's a crispness in the air, and you're sowing seeds.
It seems a little counterintuitive, doesn't it? I always think about getting my garden ready for winter by then, not starting something new.
I know, right? But it's all about working with nature, not against it. Think about those late-blooming wildflowers that scatter their seeds in the fall. They spend the winter tucked away in the soil, going through that natural stratification process we talked about earlier.
And then they just burst forth in the spring.
Exactly, and that's what we're doing with fall sowing. We're giving those seeds a head start on their winter chilling, so they're ready to hit the ground running come spring.
I like it. What kind of plants are we talking about here?
This technique works particularly well for those tough, cold-hardy annuals, like poppies, larkspur, and bachelor's buttons.
Oh, I love those. They're so vibrant and cheerful.
They really are. And imagine them blooming even earlier than usual next spring. Just a burst of color to welcome the new season.
Okay, you've convinced me I need to try this fall sowing thing. So how does it actually work? Is it similar to winter sowing?
It's very similar. You're still using those trusty Ziploc bags filled with that same moist seed starting mix, but instead of putting them out in March, you're sowing those seeds in the fall.
So same setup, different timing. Got it. When exactly should I be doing this fall sowing?
The guide recommends sometime between late September and early November. That gives those seeds enough time to settle in before the really cold weather hits.
Okay, makes sense. Do those bags still need drainage holes?
Absolutely. Drainage is crucial. We don't want those seeds sitting in waterlogged soil all winter. Just a few small holes will do the trick.
Got it. So once those bags are prepped and ready to go, where do I put them?
You want to find a sheltered spot out of the direct sun and wind, maybe tucked behind a shed or along a fence line. Somewhere they'll be protected from the worst of the winter weather.
So it's like creating a little winter haven for my seeds.
Exactly. You're giving them a cozy spot to snuggle in and wait for spring.
I love that. So we're letting Mother Nature do her thing all winter long. And then what happens in the spring? Do I just transplant those seedlings directly into the garden?
Pretty much. Once that last frost date has passed and the soil has warmed up, you can carefully remove those seedlings from their bags and plant them out, just like you would with any other seedlings.
And of course, we'll want to harden them off first, right?
Always a good idea. We want those seedlings to be tough and ready to face the world.
Makes sense. So fall sowing seems like a great way to extend the gardening season and get a head start on those beautiful blooms. Are there any downsides or things I should be aware of?
Well, the biggest challenge is always the weather. You never know what kind of winter we're going to have here in Michigan. If we have a particularly harsh winter with lots of wild temperature swings, you might lose some seedlings.
Yeah, that's true. Gardening is always a bit of a gamble, isn't it? But it sounds like the potential rewards outweigh the risks.
I think so too. And remember, the best way to learn is by doing this. Don't be afraid to experiment. Try fall sowing a few different varieties and see what works best in your garden.
Experimentation is the heart of gardening, right?
Absolutely. It's all about trying new things, making observations, and figuring out what works best in your unique little corner of the world.
That's what makes it so fun and rewarding. Well, I have to say, this deep dive has been incredibly inspiring. I've learned so much about winter sowing, fall sowing, and all the amazing things we can do to create a thriving garden here in Michigan.
It's been a pleasure sharing all these tips and techniques with you.
And for our listeners, don't forget to check out the Mastering Michigan Gardening Guide. It's full of even more great information.
And we've only scratched the surface here today. There's so much more to explore in the world of gardening.
Absolutely. We'll have to do another deep dive sometime soon. Maybe we can tackle container gardening or organic pest control.
Oh, I like those ideas. Let's put them on the list.
So listeners, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into all sorts of fascinating topics. We've got some great episodes coming up.
And don't forget to leave us a comment. Let us know what other deep dives you'd like to hear. We're always open to suggestions.
Until next time, happy gardening, everyone.